Lionhearted Entertainment.
But yeah, let's hit the segment of the day. So huge news or this week or last week now. Spotify and Joe Rogan came with a deal. So now Joe Rogan's podcast is going to be exclusively aired on Spotify. So really, what does that mean for the audio streaming and everything moving forward? What did you guys think about the deal?
I mean, that's fucking crazy. 100 million in anything is out of this world. So it's actually wild that they were the first ones to take the jump with that, especially Apple being Apple. But I mean, it's going to pay off. And I think it just changes the whole entire dynamic of podcasts and how people get their music source. Well, not music, just their audio source in general. I think with all the exclusive rights that they have to it, I think more and more you'll start seeing bigger people get these deals with Apple, Spotify, maybe SoundCloud down the road, YouTube, just because of this deal.
And from what I know Spotify is kind of a younger generation of users. I think that they're going to get different users now from this. I think a little bit of an older crowd's going to move to Spotify. So I think that they adapt to a little bit of older users, and then, they start listening and doing whatever else on Spotify as a platform in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the demographic, the overall demographics of Joe Rogan's fan base are. I would assume that some of it is our age. There's probably a good percentage that's older than us.
Yeah.
Maybe in their early 30s, mid 30s, even their 40s. Because I mean, Joe Rogan himself is in his 50s, right? He's in his mid 50s. So I'm sure they have an older fan base that's not as familiar with Spotify.
Well, here's the thing, Joe. The reason why Joe Rogan gets so much popularity and all these views on YouTube is because his demographic is probably the most mixed compared to any single podcast or possibly person.
He was also just one of the first ones that really consistently put out content for a long period of time. He was one of the first ones that was yo, this podcast thing is gonna catch on. I'm just gonna start doing this and continue. Yeah. I mean, you look at the podcast now, and it's podcast number 1400 or 1500.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You put in the work.
He just goes too. He just keeps pumping out fucking content with no signs of stopping.
He enjoys it.
Well, I think the biggest thing to talk about, to realize about podcasts is, and he said podcasts is all about free balling. It's about the opposite of being polished. And because of that, it resonates. So he also said something you can't cook or walk while reading. And when you're reading, especially through an ebook or something and really listening to it, you still have to pay attention. With a podcast, you can kind of miss points. And then the points.
Conversation. It's
a conversation and it's real.
This whole page and I'm going to read it to you. It's it's a conversation.
It's an opinion.
You can just be part of a conversation and just lightly listen to it.
Exactly. And it's real. And it all switches direction. With his podcast, I don't think it's all drawn out. I think he'll say something to a guest and the guest will get thrown off and then it has to become a real conversation. Whereas you're saying, it's not drawn out. So I think that's what's just going to be huge about podcasts in general. Just the real of it, the conversation.
Yeah, I think that the market for podcasts is way bigger than audiobooks. Exactly what you just explained. It's an audiobook you have to physically pay attention to, whereas a podcast is almost like AR content. It's like virtual reality or augmented reality. You can put in your AirPods and you could be walking around and you're in a conversation with people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And learning, you're also learning shit too.
Yeah. You could be learning shit. It could just be all bullshit. And it's just a fun entertainment thing to listen to.
But some things will stick. You never know.
I think Joe's podcast is the number one example.
And it looks
I've learned a ton of things from that podcast, but I've also just listened to comedians on there and bullshit on there.
And it looks like they've already determined some type of value. The market already understands it, because if you look at it, it added 1.7 billion to its market cap in 23 minutes.
It was So that's the other thing that people need to understand is 100 million sounds like a lot, but Spotify, the Spotify market cap went up 9% in 2 days, which was $5 billion.
And it should, because I mean, if you think of it, just the amount of this opens up literally, it probably doubles if not triples, any of the content Spotify was making just by itself, you know? Like you don't really get bigger than Joe Rogan Experience.
It increases the attention. It will increase the users. It'll increase the ad revenue for the people that don't want to have the premium account. And
so let me pause you on that, because explain to me how the podcast works on Spotify, because I know you could, like, as a free user, you could just go listen to the podcast episode, right?
Yeah.
So what differentiates a free user listening to podcasts?
I think that the only difference will probably be it'll be like a TV show. Like if you're watching live TV, they'll have like a commercial every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes or something like that.
Like a real commercial though, or like Joe Rogan,
like,
yo, this is blah, 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 sponsored by this.
No, not Joe saying it. Like Joe, I don't know if he'll still do those commercials that he does, because that's how they get most of their money. Joe makes like a lot of money right now.
Yeah.
Like without this deal, he makes like $10 to $30 million a year just from his regular podcast. And it's not from the YouTube ad revenue. Most of it is from the sponsorships at the beginning of the podcast, which aren't even aired on YouTube. They're aired on like Apple Podcasts.
The actual podcast.
Everything else that they put it on. Like
so it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird then to see like how Spotify, I mean, it probably will follow a similar thing to YouTube. Like if you're free, you won't get that ad, but if you pay, but see, that's the thing. If you pay, what, you get an ad from Joe Rogan now?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
I mean,
not.
honestly, maybe
because he doesn't.
Maybe not. Yeah,
he doesn't need to do that. I think the other really big reason why Joe did this was because of the censorship on YouTube and the censorship through Google, and he wants to be able to basically have any guest on that he wants and talk about any topic that he wants without being censored from YouTube.
I mean, shit's been getting removed off of YouTube left and right. I think he mentioned that.
And I think that has like a big that's like a big influence on why he wanted to sign this deal, because the first guest is apparently Alex Jones.
Oh yeah. That's for the September episode, the one that airs.
Yeah, the first guest is Alex Jones, and then the second guest is Elon.
You want to tell everyone who Alex Jones is for people that don't know?
So I mean, Alex Jones is basically like I don't even know how to describe him. I mean, he's basically just like
Isn't he like a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, he's like a conspiracy theorist, and he's like, I don't know if people think he's like super right-winged or whatever, but he's just like a crazy conspiracy theorist guy. Yeah. And he just like says like ridiculous things, and he's gotten kicked off like most of the platforms that are hosted by like Silicon Valley companies. Like he's gotten kicked off of YouTube and kicked off of Twitter because they're all like basically backed by people that think in a liberal way. Like Silicon Valley is very left-wing biased, and all of those platforms are owned by left-wing companies like Twitter and Google. But Spotify is actually a European company. So I don't know. I'm sure that they have their own bias, but I think part of the contract was that Joe could just do whatever he wanted.
I mean, for $100 million, you kind of got to let someone have that control, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part is that, like, the reality is they gave Joe $100 million, or that's for 2 years or 3 years to license his content. He's worth like $1 billion plus, and it's just reflected in the market cap of the company.
Well, and also his podcast has 190 million downloads a month, which, you know, theoretically, if that all goes to Spotify now, is fucking huge for them. The one thing that I would say is, it just shows how important Spotify and going all in on podcasts is, because they literally just said that they didn't have enough money anymore now to give artists as much as they were giving them and musicians. So now, does this devalue, like, are they saying basically flat out, we don't value our artists and musicians as much? We're kind of switching into that podcasting. Well, but artists,
I think that the thing that they don't have to deal with podcasts is labels. And I think that the hardest thing that they've had to deal with since they've blown up really has been dealing with labels. Because what they want to do is they want to become like, they want to get rid of the middleman and just let the artists release their music directly on the platform without having to go through this third party. But right now, all of these big artists are signed to these labels, which are essentially just middlemen. They don't actually do anything. They just front the money, and then they take a huge portion of the royalties, and then Spotify can't fairly pay the artists and still make a net profit or a net gain on
But how do you even see that changing though?
I mean, over time,
like with more and more labels
we've
coming
already
out.
seen it. We've already seen it. We've already seen people just blow up on the internet. Like you have one video on Cole Bennett's YouTube channel, and you're huge.
Yeah.
Let me throw something in the mix now. Do you think this changes how maybe streaming services play into music now? Like, do you think, when streaming services first started, like Apple paid Drake whatever to release his shit on Apple Music early, right?
Yeah, but they
went back, and they stopped all that. But
which I think is kind of stupid.
That could be heavily influenced though by labels, obviously. So do you think as an independent artist now, do you think we'll ever see a wave kind of like this whole podcast wave where Spotify might be like, hey, you're an independent artist, we'll give you $5 million a year and we get the rights to your content. You got to release an album under us.
Well, it's illegal.
Just in general.
For music. You can't only release your music on one platform. That was what that law did.
So wait, was this law geared around labels though, or was it geared around just music in general?
It was based off of when Drake started doing that. He released his album a week early on Apple Music, and it was only available for a week on Apple Music. And then Tidal started doing that. Like the Free Weezy album is still only on Tidal.
Yeah.
And then they Jay-Z took all of his content off of everything and just put it only on Tidal for a while. That was actually until recently, and I don't know
they actually just put that back last year, I think.
I really hope that that's not the direction that they go in, because I think that just hurts the fans, and it kind of in some way hurts the artists too, because yes, they get paid that upfront money from the platform, but then their music isn't as popular because not as many people have access to it unless they directly pay for it.
But that's the thing though. So now that you have, but in theory, it's similar to this whole podcast thing. You're on Spotify only now. You lose a ton of access to pretty much whoever you had before, Yeah,
but it's still free. At least
Spotify is technically still free. There's a bunch of free users on Spotify.
That's what I'm saying. Spotify's free. It's like YouTube, where it's you can go on YouTube and just watch whatever you want.
Yeah, but I'm saying
the Drake thing wasn't free. They put that on Apple Music, and you have to be an Apple Music member to listen to it. Same with Tidal. It was Tidal's not free. You have to be a premium subscriber.
But that's because those two aren't free. All right, I see what you're saying.
The one thing
Spotify is free though. So
the one thing that I would say is that this happens with all content. It's not just podcasts. It's not just music. It's movies. If you look at Netflix, So I don't know if it's the debate about whether it should be or shouldn't be allowed. That's just going to happen with content in general.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that there is different laws for each type of content, because there's different that's not how it should be. Everything should be open. You should be able to do whatever the fuck you want as an artist or as a creator of content. You should be able to do whatever you want with the content. If you own the rights to it, you should be able to license it to whoever you want.
Well, the thing is, that's why I'm saying I think it was then you take it was more so with the labels though. I think it's more so with the labels, because say whatever, obviously Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, whoever is working hand in hand with these labels, and they're probably going back and forth with different artists, different whatever they do daily, and they're going to be like, yo, you just dropped Drake shit on Apple Music but not ours. All right, well, now we don't want to put blah 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 in the spotlight,
Yeah, I don't want it to get like that, because I want whatever happens to benefit content creators. And I want it to benefit content creators and fans, and have less of the people in the middle, politically involved in all of this. That's what it should be. It should just be organically people putting out content and people on the internet being able to consume that content, and whatever is the best and whatever is universally accepted as being the most entertaining should go to the top. That's what should happen.
Is that what happens with this deal though?
I think that there's more nuance to this deal though. I think that one of the issues that you have to consider is the network effects of YouTube and the influence that Google has because they own YouTube, and the way that they can just take people's content off if they don't agree with their bias.
Yeah.
Joe is one thing, because Joe is so big that if they take something off that Joe does, then it's a huge PR problem that they have to deal with. Yeah. But other smaller content creators, they can do that and they can kick people off, like Alex Jones. They just kicked him off the platform, right? That shouldn't be allowed because YouTube is essentially a public good at this point. It benefits from like the network effects of just being the first mover advantage on the internet of like a video streaming platform. Yes, it functions great and Google runs it and that's awesome. But at the same time, it's basically like a public utility on the internet.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's so much content that I don't see why music would be different in the case of there's so much exclusive. I mean, like, I guess the label thing, like I said, is one thing. But if you're an independent artist, what's stopping you from just bang right to Spotify instead of Apple Music? Because you got things like.
I'm not saying that it should be illegal. I'm saying that anybody should be able to do anything with their own content.
What they want. Yeah,
they own,
I agree.
Right. But the reason why Joe wants to do this deal, part of it, I believe, is because he wants to get away from YouTube.
Just more freedom, yeah.
He is basically supporting another platform so that they don't have this network effect and this monopoly on the internet of content. Right now they have a monopoly on video content on the internet. Like, it's hard to deny that. They absolutely have a network effect.
That's it. You're not really going anywhere else for video content.
But so think about this. This is kind of what I've been thinking about a little bit. What if Spotify uses Joe Rogan to launch that capability on their platform?
But the thing is, yes, like if they do release Joe Rogan video, that
say they release it the same way that it's released on YouTube right now.
Yeah, but you got to realize one thing though. YouTube has everything, you know.
I know.
So
they have the catalog of all the other videos. Yes. Once they add that feature, okay, now that there's a competitor in the market, it's less about Joe Rogan than it is about Spotify adding video capability to their platform. And
but you got to realize though,
podcasts in the world.
Where's the cutoff for Spotify's video capability? Because sure, launch videos, whatever, but you only got Joe Rogan. No one's going to go to Spotify just to watch Joe Rogan, you know? I mean, they are like,
but here's the thing.
I didn't know
there's no competitor to YouTube. Like, say Spotify launches this, right? And they have more users, premium users than Apple Music by 2x already. So there's already a ton of people on Spotify. And that's just paid like premium users. They already have like a lot of free people too. If they give another feature where it allows people to put videos on Spotify also, what's to stop you from putting your video on YouTube and Spotify?
No, people will probably do both. But the thing is, YouTube has hundreds and hundreds of millions of fucking people on it. Like, I'm not going to Spotify just to watch.
The network effect of that already. But then Spotify is using the leverage of licensing people's content.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, they would have to literally go after every big person on YouTube.
But they already
have. Paul, like all the fucking.
Rogan isn't the only one that they did. They did it with Bill Russell or whatever the sports dude is.
Bill Simmons.
Yeah, Bill Simmons. Yeah. They already paid him. So say they get the top 5 people.
Yeah, but the top 5 people on YouTube are very, very, very minute to what YouTube is.
I agree with you. But
YouTube is fucking huge.
It's more a matter of just having some kind of competition. Because right now there's no competition for YouTube.
I agree that like they should definitely add video to it, but at the same time, then back to this whole conversation of the whole streaming and everything. Now what? People are just going to have exclusive YouTube videos only, you know, like, or exclusive Spotify videos only, exclusive, like.
I don't know. I mean, well, I guess we'll see.
You need like a solid mix, you know?
I guess the big question is, does this validate the value of content creators? And will we see a $1 billion licensing deal in the next 10 years, like before 2030, with a content creator?
I mean, that's thinking very far out. But I mean, you got to think of how big you have to be for $1 billion deal. Like, Joe Rogan's pretty fucking big, you know?
Yeah, but the internet and access to the internet is only going to exponentially increase, right? As the cost of the smartphone goes down, as we get satellite internet from Starlink, and eventually Blue Origin will launch their own satellite internet, and it gets cheaper and cheaper for everyone to get internet and a smartphone in their pocket. I mean, right now you can go and get an iPhone with an A12 chip for $399.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I maybe not a billion, but you never know. Like just, yes, content creators are huge right now. If you just look at what's been going on, I don't know if you guys have been following it, but with Barstool and Call Her Daddy girls, like, I don't know if you guys have kept up with that at all.
I've seen Dave like just been posting memes on Twitter. Like,
yeah. So they basically like, they did some dumb shit. The girl, well, one of the girls, she fucked up. They were like, they were living paycheck to paycheck, not really working. And then they got an offer from Dave to keep their content basically and give them $500,000 salary each. And one of the girls got way too greedy and it fucked up the whole situation. But he came back to them like 4 or 5 different times on just a small podcast talking about like fucking pussy and like,
but that's not a small podcast. That's a thing.
But it was created in like 3 or 4 months and got that big. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying content is so valuable now, and the creators of it. So like to be able to create something like that.
The point. I think that the future, especially when more goods are just digitized, like since we've been in quarantine, haven't you realized that like most of the stuff you buy just you don't actually need, and you really only pay for like food? I don't really buy any clothes. I don't buy anything. The only thing that I consume is digital content. And the only new digital content is made by creators and like creative people, right? Mm-hmm. So all of the value in the future, once everything gets like digitized, is in people creating things on the internet. So I think that the value is $100 million for licensing Joe Rogan's content for 2 years, maybe 3 years, is going to be like nothing in 10 years.
It probably, honestly, it probably is.
There's going to be people that are literally massive.
Well, here's what I'll make a quick analogy with it. And I like that you chose $1 billion because, I mean, $1 billion is a lot of fucking money. But if you think of like the overall like movie scheme, like movies are what, like $300 million budgets for like sick movies like Avengers and shit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like realistically, if you could do movie numbers as a content creator, I mean, there's a good chance you'll see $1 billion, you know?
100%. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Actually that's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
Wow, Tono came up with something that was smart and creative.
But the only thing is, and I'll backtrack that a little, is how big does your content have to be on a movie level, you know? Like you got to be.
I think that people are going to get really creative. Like as more people flood into creating new content and more people get familiar with like the different Adobe software or whatever, like audio editing or video editing software that they're going to use, people are just going to get more creative. Like,
I mean, now's the time, you know, like this is the start of it.
Yeah. And we're just going to get better phones, better, faster internet. Like everything's going to get better, probably going to get cheaper in real terms. Like maybe not cheap, like physically cheaper because of inflation, but like it's going to get cheaper in real terms to pay for all of this stuff. You're going to have to pay for 1 subscription or 2 subscriptions and you'll get all of the content you could possibly imagine, that you can never consume all of it. This is the other thing I've been kind of thinking about is I don't realistically know when artists are going to be able to tour again because of these health concerns and like the liability. Like concert venues have to pay for liability insurance, and there's no way that they're going to be able to have like live concerts. Probably this year, definitely not. Next year, maybe, probably not. Maybe 2022, we'll be able to have live concerts again, but I guess we'll see. I have no idea. So artists are going to have to be more creative with how they get money, and they can either do sponsorships where they have some kind of deal, like maybe with Nike or Puma or Adidas or something like that, or they create content. So like Lil Dicky has his show on Hulu and FX, and Joe Budden has his podcast. I mean, Joe Budden's made more money creating a podcast than he ever did in music.
Yeah, with his
music. Is this going to be the trend where basically you build your following in one thing and then you transition to this other thing because you don't have any, like, I mean, think about how much time the average artist last year spent touring.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, you're going to find out who the real fucking artists are, you know? Like if you truly have this creative mindset right now, and what you put into your music, if you could put that into other places, you're going to see who the true artists are, because most of their money comes from touring. So you literally cannot tour. Figure it out. Now you're going to really put this to the test and see who you are.
Well, and I think who the real creative people are.
It really comes down to them too, like realizing. So I think I saw something that Gunna missed out. He said on $7 million over, the virus so far. So I feel like once it hits their pockets, they're going to say, oh shit, I need other streams of revenue. Like I'm hurting a little bit. I can't buy my 115th necklace and watch. Like I gotta come out with something now. So I think it's gonna take a little bit of time to realize like, oh, this is how much money I'm losing. Now I gotta go out and create something.
But they can.
And the thing is like you could only do so much if you don't have that creative process. Like if you don't know how to make your own content and at least be engaging with fans, like aside from the music level, then you're kind of screwed in all this,
No, but you have the money to reach out to creative people that can give you some type of direction.
That still takes some kind of intelligence to know how to put stuff together. You still kind of have to think outside the box a little bit for sure.
I mean, it should be interesting. Like I think the next definitely couple months, we're going to start seeing a big change in this, not only just digital content era, but I think think about like the one thing I was thinking about is like, what if the Gunna doc was like a whole Netflix series, right? Like, and you released like a Netflix documentary series of you making the album and it came out the same day as the album came out, or like a week later after the album came out, or like I'll probably do it before the album comes out.
Yeah, but I mean, you might not want to do that just because like there's all clips of making the songs and like, but think about how many people watch like the Michael Jordan documentary and you're like witnessing greatness and you're witnessing it. Like there's a lot of money to be made in showing people the behind the scenes of creating this other thing.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that could be part of it. It's like, oh, all right, we're going to make this, we're going to sit in Atlanta and we're going to make this album over the next 2 months. And we're going to record the whole thing and make it into like a documentary series or like a reality show or something like that. Like there's so many creative things that you could do.
I mean, that's a good take too, because honestly, like TV, movies, like everything's getting pushed back, so like we haven't even seen like the worst of this yet because all the movies that were supposed to come out the last 2 months got pushed back. Anything in production the last 2 months got pushed back. So in a time of this whole digital era, we actually need content. So
yeah, I mean, if I was a pop artist, I would try to find like a dope ass animation team.
You gotta.
And I think that is where I would go. That's the direction that I would go, because you're not going to get live action content for a while, like good live action content that takes a lot of people to make. But what you could do is make animated content, like with a bunch of people working from home and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would pivot to that. But in general, I think that artists in anything, it doesn't just have to be music. It could be podcasts or anything. They should pivot to more than one type of content and just put out stuff under their brand or under their name and try to get these licensing deals, because clearly it's going to be a trend for the future.
Yeah. That's the start of it.
I think the largest bullet that has to do with music though is the future of Spotify. So say this Joe Rogan thing kind of takes off, and I mean, Spotify already has an amazing trajectory. It already has like the most paid subscribers out of any audio content company and like platform. What could happen in the future of like music deals and labels? Like what if there's no label, and what if you can invest in artists before they blow up? And
yeah, I know you had that theory for a little bit.
So you could essentially have like an initial public offering where you could say, all right, I'm an up and coming artist. I'm going to fundraise for 20% of the royalties of my discography forever.
Yeah.
Right. And you do it through Spotify. So Spotify keeps like a ledger of all the people that invested into this artist, right? Like say you invested into Uzi in like 2014, 2015, when he was kind of coming up, and you owned 1% or 0.5% of his discography, right? And now that's worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars. Could that be something that we see? And so instead of labels fronting people millions of dollars, it's like individual investors or individual music fans funding these people money and then seeing a residual return on that.
I mean, I always been a fan of that idea because I know they try to do something similar with athletes before, and I think it still should be a thing. The only, not really an issue, but the only like gray area is a lot of these people make money off the books. So,
oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
It's hard to kind of compensate like someone that's making $1 million on paper from concerts, but they're getting 100 grand cash every time they go to a club or something. And
I mean, I don't think that you can auction off all of their revenue. I think it would really just be like basically the royalties for the music.
I mean, I love that idea too, but think about it this way though. So someone notices a kid coming up and they say, you know what, we'll give you $4 million. We'll put out your marketing and everything, and we'll take this percentage when you blow up. That is so much quicker than a bunch of people slowly noticing that you're getting poppin' and investing into you. Like, how long does that take to build the money for them to where they need to like, they want to just take off their career. You know what I mean? So like, let's say me and you know Uzi at 2014, but how many people would he need to have been invested in him to create a value for him?
But I mean, maybe it's not all at once though. Like, that's not how stocks work. Basically what an IPO is that they agree upon the initial price and they agree upon how many shares that they're going to unleash onto the market at once. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're like, okay, give me money until I raise X amount. That's like a fundraiser. Whereas like an IPO would be, I'm raising $2 million worth of like royalties percentage, and I'm going to give away like 20% or 30%.
Right, but during an IPO, usually the companies has been around for a little bit.
Yeah, think of the difference there, though. Think of the difference,
built a buzz, though. They're not just gonna.
Yeah, but if they built a buzz, and a label catches sight of that, the label is just going to offer more in a quicker.
I think that there's a benefit of having a label, but there's also cons to having a label.
Yeah.
Like
no, 100%.
A lot of the deals aren't. I still own 80% of my royalties. If you had like a little bit of a buzz and you had like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of views, but you just needed upfront capital to get stuff rolling, or you wanted to.
But see, then it takes away from what you're saying as an investment into a person and more of a fundraising thing.
No, it doesn't, because no one with like 3 followers is going to be like, yeah, buy 10% of my discography. If you do that, then you're wasting all of your potential if you're really good. Like the same thing applies to startups. No startup goes to fundraise the first day out of the gate. They build a valuable product, they get users, and then they go raise funds. And they raise the smallest percentage of their market cap or of their equity as they can, because they want to maintain their ownership of their equity. It would be the same with artists. You don't want to go into a deal right now. The label basically says, hey, this kid's talented. I think we can make money off of him. Let's give him like a 360 deal, or let's give him a deal where we own like 70% of the royalties for him, and we just give him this upfront bag of like $2 million, $3 million. Whereas this way, it would be like more organic. The person would build up, and then they could say, okay, I want to raise like a couple $100,000 with 5% of my future royalties. Like they could chunk out little pieces at a time, like series investing. Like a startup.
Yeah. I get it. I think it's a great idea. I would just, as an artist, I feel like there's so many, it's just such a precise window sometimes that you might just drop a song and you have just such little time to get it to fucking pop off, or you might miss your chance and then it never comes to kind of light. So
I think that there's room in the market for both things, but I think that there's definitely some artists that could benefit. That
would benefit off of it more.
An infusion of capital that came from individuals and not like in the industry.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. It's like you're either getting your capital from the industry in a much larger percentage, but you're giving away more of yourself. You're giving away more of your brand.
I think it's a good idea.
You're raising less capital, but it's more distributed to a bunch of other people that only have like a small ownership in you. And then not only that, but think about this. Say you do an IPO of your your shares and your royalties in the future, right? And 20,000 people participate in your IPO rather than just one label. Well, now all of those people have skin in the game with you as an artist. So they're incentivized to spread your music. So it's just more people incentivized to spread your music to all of the people that they know, because they benefit from that. Not only the label and the few people that run the label and really make money at the label.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Spotify has the potential to build up advertising. Like they could basically be like Google AdWords for artists, where the artist could put their music on Spotify and they have so many users that the artist could like basically pay for advertising of their music to get more viewers, right? Like they have the potential to set that up. And I think that they're already trying to do that. They see this vision. They have this vision of like
that. I like a lot better. I think that makes a lot more sense.
But you have to get the capital from somewhere.
Like
Google AdWords are expensive, right?
I mean, that's just going to make labels stronger, realistically.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. I think that there is a spot for labels because labels provide you with like the videography, the initial capital. They provide you with like potentially recording studio.
I mean, everything really, connections.
Lawyers is huge, like all of that. Yeah, some of the connections in the industry. But then at the same time, there's a lot of benefits to being independent. You get your artistic integrity. You get
so much more money.
Yeah. You own more of your royalties. So there's benefits. There's pros and cons to each one. I think we'll see it play out in an interesting way. And I think that Spotify is incentivized to decentralize music a lot more, because then that they can actually be more profitable and they don't have to give as much of the revenue to the label. They can give more to the artist and still be profitable.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a fire idea, and hopefully this whole like scene of independent artists starts to rise up more with everything going on.
Definitely a great discussion and topic. And we'll definitely come back to it and talk about it in more detail. But is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about tonight? Thank you for tuning in to episode 6 of Check the Tide. If there are any segments you would like to see us do, please reach out and let us know. We fucking got you. Until next week.
Lionhearted Entertainment.